Welcome back, it's me Streaky. Today I'm going to tell you the truth about EQ for mastering. What you do and what you don't do that's going to make you do much better mastering. If you are new here, I do 3 videos a week which are tutorials on mixing and mastering. So if you want to know about that from someone who's been working in the industry for 25 years, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified every time I upload. Right, now let's get tucked into the video. So EQing in mastering, there is loads of different things you need to think about, and I'm going to go through all those now so you know exactly what the truth is to what you have to do when you EQ and things you need to think about when you're mastering. So I've got this FabFilter Pro Q2. It's just a standard one. We're not going to get into dynamic EQ or any other fancy MS EQing. We're just going for left and right channels, standard EQ, the same as you would if you had a hardware EQ. These things all work the same. I've got a track here from Luca Tresca Joy. Thanks for sending that in. If you want to send your demo tracks in, please send them to demos@streaky.com and I'll feature them on the channel. Just make sure there's no copyright on them. So let's have a quick listen to this where it's flat. So I'm going to show you some general stuff that you do most of the time. Now, you'll hear a lot about doing low cuts. Now, the reason why sometimes you do low cuts, I tend to do them on nearly everything, is because really, if you're doing any compression, any type of processing after this EQ, you're going to start dragging up any noise that's happening at the bottom. You really want to start thinking about cutting the low end. You don't want to cut too much. I don't tend to go a lot over 20 hertz these days. When you're cutting vinyl, you used to go to about 40 hertz, but we're not cutting vinyl at the moment. So about 20 at the slope so that it's about 18, 24, depending on the sound. You need to listen to what you're doing to make that judgment. But usually I put a cut in there. What it does, it just tends to make the low end a lot tighter and it tends to make the compressors, as I say, work better. So that's really something that you do most of the time. You'll find most mastering engineers put a low cut in on the mix. And also if you're a mix engineer sending something to a mastering engineer, sometimes it's a good idea just to leave the low end. If you were doing too many cuts in the low end, it's good to leave it. Then it leaves the mastering engineer he's got probably some better equipment or better speakers, so he can hear exactly what he's doing, and then obviously can manipulate the low end exactly how he wants. So if you are a little bit worried before you're sending something off, then it's good to leave that uncut and let the mastering engineer cut it. So if we just listen to how that is, let's just put this, I like this in linear phase high. Linear phase just because I want it a little bit more detailed. We're in mastering, so I want it to sort of not be too blurred. Sometimes it sounds a little bit blurred, not as sharp, so linear phase I find nicer. Now, if you think that's taking a little bit too much off, sometimes you can do a little notch up like this, and this kind of replicates what vinyl does a little bit. So notching that up around 20 hertz, it's sort of really low down, but it just adds a really nice kind of thump to the low end. Because you're putting that cut in, you're kind of making up for it here. So let's just listen how that sounds. So you can hear that just the bass suddenly gets a little bit more presence. Okay, another thing that I like to do is I don't like to subtract EQ. I prefer to add EQ. Now, you'll notice I'm not actually adding a lot here. If we bring this down so that it's at 3, with mastering, you really want to be adding no more than, say, 2 dB, 2 dB max. It's all about very small little changes in mastering so that you can, so that they all add up. But you're at quite a high level at mastering, as in volume. So every little tiny bit you add is going to really make quite a big difference. Whereas when you're mixing or when you're recording, those kind of big differences don't make as much as a change to the whole sound. We're dealing with a stereo track here, remember? So there's a lot of stuff going on. So you don't really want to be pushing too much level. But going back to what I was saying, I do like to add rather than take away. Now, the reason why you add and you don't take away is because, as you can see here, we have a natural kind of curve happening. Say I added around 250, which I might do. I'm only adding half a dB. But what I'm doing, as you can see, because I've added that little bit at the bottom, this bit here is actually taking away, if you like, because I'm making curves. So it's highlighting this, it's highlighting this, and say you've got some top happening. Let's just change that so that it's a high shelf. Say we've got that happening, and just make that wider. You can do that by holding the command key down on here. So you can see I've got some natural curves going here. This is going to sort of really open the tops, but what's happening is, instead of just bringing this level up, I'm now actually getting some nice little takeaways here. But they're happening in a way where I'm adding rather than taking away. As soon as you start taking away, then you start taking away too much, and there's so much happening in this frequency range. I'd rather not take it away. I'd rather just add around it. And also and one of the main reasons why I add is because gain structure for gain staging, to get things loud as you're going through each bit of equipment. Because every time you add this, you're then adding, say, a bit of gain makeup on a compressor, you're adding something else. As that gain structure develops, then you're going to get a louder and louder master without having to just slam it through a limiter. So that's really a sort of main secret of why you add rather than subtract. But you do also get these natural curves. Otherwise, you're not getting any gain out of this. If I wasn't adding any gain and I was just sort of taking away here, it's giving me a curve, but it's really, it's gonna make the sound less rather than more. And I want more because I don't want to have to add that more later on. So, you can do some little takeaways, but really generally I'm liking to, add and not take away. Now, something else so these are some settings that I do quite a lot, but these are the kind of general rules around how you use EQ for mastering. Some nice ones that you can do quite a lot. Now, having this in the top end, if you've got this in a dynamic EQ, it works really nicely just to add some high end. But what you tend to do quite a lot is just add about half a dB, but add it really high up, because that way you can get, it's at 30 hertz or 30k, sorry. But if you're only adding 1 dB, but as you can see, it's starting around 5. So that's lifting all the top end of the vocals, it's lifting all the top end of the track, but it's only half a dB, but it does make a hell of a difference. Let me just show you how that sounds. So you can hear it it's not making it too bright, it's not making it too edgy, but it's just adding a really nice bit of air across the rest of the track. So generally that's something that mastering engineers do a lot. They'll add half a dB or a dB super high up, 30k. Depending on the EQ, they're all going to sound different. So I know this EQ, so I know this setting actually sounds pretty good. So if you're enjoying the truth about EQ so far, then please make sure you like this video. It really does help me out, helps the algorithm on YouTube show this to more people. So please do me the favor and give it a thumbs up now. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed. So let me now show you another trick that mastering engineers do a lot of the time, is they will pull out a little bit at around 1.7, 1.5 to 1.7, and they'll just pull it out and then they'll play around with it just to see how it's sounding. What this does, gives you a really nice perceived loudness. So instead of having to slam it through, if you've got a mix that's kind of tight and you wanted to slam it through a limiter, you can actually get a bit of perceived level from adding just say half a dB, not too much, because this is where our ear picks up most of the frequencies very easily, like on phones and stuff like that. So but just by adding a touch in the mids right there, not too wide but not too tight, it actually gives you a really good sound. So let's just listen to that too. So So you can hear it, again, it's really subtle, but it's a massive change, especially after this if you add some EQ, compression, things like that. Now, following on from this, if you want to know about subtractive EQ, where I'll show you the only reason why I use subtractive EQ rather than using additive EQ all the time. So I'll see you in the next video.